Belfast and the Belfast Area Transition Initiative as sponsors of the March Eat Local Challenge featuring locally grown, raised, and harvested food. More information at www.belfast.coop.
The time is 9:59 and you are tuned to WERU-FM 89.9 Blue Hill and streaming online around the world at weru.org. Bangor Area Comments with your host Meaghan LaSala is up next.
Good morning. You're listening to the Bangor Area Commons. This is an hour dedicated to stories, issues, and arts in the greater Bangor area. I'm your host, Meaghan LaSala. I have joined the team here at WERU this year thanks to a grant from AmeriCorps to do community outreach and development in the Bangor area. And the year is coming to an end rather quickly. I have about 5 months left here as an AmeriCorps Vista, and we'll be looking for someone to continue this show on after I'm done. So if you live in the Bangor area and you're interested, get in touch with me here at the station. WERU has been approved for a second frequency in the Bangor area, and our hope is to have 99.9 up and running on the air sometime in the next few weeks, hopefully. And this means that our signal in the Bangor area will be larger and stronger than it's ever been there before. And I will keep you updated here on the show as the plans to launch the new signal develop. Today's show is about stories and about storytelling. And specifically, it's about the Story Slam Bangor, which is a live storytelling event that happens monthly in the Bangor area. And I have two guests in the studio with me today. I have Jesse Moriarty and Zachary Pike. And they're two founders of the event Story Slam Bangor. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we will be taking calls today in about 20 minutes. So get your phones ready. If you maybe have questions about what we're going to be talking about, maybe a story to tell, anything about the craft and the ancient art of storytelling. But first, we're going to talk about what this event is. I guess let's start with what's your story? How did you meet each other? And how did you decide to start doing this event?
So this really started last summer. Anya Rose is the third founder, and unfortunately she got a job and just moved to Boston, which we're very happy for her, but we miss her. I am the coordinator of the Foster Center for Student Innovation at the University of Maine, and I met Anya a couple years ago. She was doing a business counseling session with me. I meet with about 100 to 125 students every semester who have ideas for businesses or projects. And Anya came in. Her mother has suffered from multiple sclerosis for years and years and years. And she came in because she wanted to do a fundraiser for her mom and was looking for ideas. And we ended up helping her with that. And then she met with us a couple more times because she wanted to start a business. And eventually she ended up starting a business, a video production business. And she applied for space in the Foster Center for Student Innovation as a tenant of ours. And so we ended up spending a lot of time together because Anya was a tenant. She was in the building a lot. And over the summer, she and I got talking about The Moth, NPR's radio show that they had just started airing. And every time we would talk about it, we have a lot of barbecues in the summer at the Innovation Center for lunch. And so she and I would just be in hysterics. We'd be talking about stories we'd heard on The Moth. And generally, I would download all the podcasts. And so she and I would go through and say, oh my gosh, did you hear the blah, blah, blah? And we would just be laughing hysterically about all these stories that we heard. And I happened to talk to a couple other people, and we started sharing stories that we'd heard on The Moth. And one day this summer, Anya and I said, why don't we do our own? Like, everybody has stories. Certainly, she and I are both storytellers. I always have found myself sort of possibly embellishing stories from time to time, but definitely being a storyteller. My dad is definitely a storyteller. And so she and I said, well, why don't we start something? And so we had started sort of doing a little bit of brainstorming, and that's sort of when Zach arrived on the scene. And I have known Zach for a long time. He was a student of ours at the Innovation Center. And he and I were just talking about on the drive here. I can't remember why he was in my office or why he was in the building, but he was there. And Anya and I were talking about the Story Slam, and it all just suddenly made perfect sense. And I said, okay, Zach, you have to come too.
I do want to get to your story in a second, Zach, but I think maybe we should back up for a second and just explain for folks that maybe haven't heard the Moth and don't know what the Slam is, just kind of talk a little bit so people know what we're talking about. Yeah,
sure. So the Moth Radio Hour is on NPR. And basically what it is they have a bunch of locations around the country where people can come and tell stories. And I'm not sure about exactly how it's run, but basically they air the stories and put them up as podcasts that are the winners of the night. And so folks can come and tell a story, and then the audience votes, and their winning story is the one that becomes a podcast. And there's always a theme, and the stories have to be live, and they have to be told without notes. So they're not all that. They're not always rehearsed. People and ah, and it's very authentic. And what's cool about the Moth is sometimes they're hilarious stories, and sometimes they're devastatingly sad stories, and sometimes they're just shocking stories. And sometimes it's like looking in someone's underwear drawer. Like, you just can't even believe that someone would tell that kind of a story. And I've had some weird experiences listening to those stories. We did a big event for work at Sugarloaf, and I was driving home one night, and it was a really weird, eerie night, and I was by myself on these back roads coming back from Sugarloaf, and it was a full moon, so like everything was lit up, but like weird colors, and I was listening to this really disturbing Moth story, and I was just affected by it, and I think stories have that kind of power where they can really affect you at very strange times in your life. So the Moth, you never know, could be hilarious, could be that you're in tears in the drive home.
So you kind of stumbled into this, Zach. What do you want to tell us about your experience with the Moth, or how you got involved with the Bangor Story Slam?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel really fortunate that I got to talk with these people right at the time, Jesse and Anya, right when it was like a very influential part of their decision process to starting something, the Bangor Story Slam. And I just happened to be popping through the Innovation Center often, because we always have wonderful conversations and talk about cool things going on in the local area. And I think I mentioned something like, Jesse, you guys ever listen to that Moth storytelling thing on the weekend? Do you like it? Do you listen to it? Anything like that? And she was like, yeah, we love it. And she told me about conversations that she had been having with Anya and how they wanted to get something together, and they weren't quite there yet, and they didn't know how it was going to work out. I was like, well, I just want to, I'd like to help you guys out. I'd like to be a part of it. Let's have a meeting or something. So then, a meeting was formed. Once we had our meeting, we made all these different decisions on, where local areas that might want to support an event like this, and different business owners who might be willing to extend some courtesy to us and allow us to use their establishment, even though we didn't have any money at all. And so then we all ended up throwing in $25 of our own money so that we could, start the process of getting a prize or getting the different things that we needed to make the event work. And we talked with Abe Firth and Heather Firth of the Verve in Orono, and they were super excited to have us, and they extended us all the courtesy in the world to having us come and work at their establishment, and it was the perfect little place for us to get started.
So what was that first event like? Did you get a good turnout, and did people kind of know what it was about, or did you have to really explain to folks
what
the event was like?
We were lucky in that, so Anya's originally from Philly, and so Anya had gone to some story slams in Philly, and so we ended up sort of borrowing from them the way that they had done it. And so our first story slam was different than the ones that we do now. So the first one we had Deb Newman, who's sort of a local radio host, be our MC, and we had prizes for every story, because one of the things Anya talked about that they did at the Philly Story Slam is so if somebody tells a really sad story or a story that just doesn't go right, or they sort of get nervous and freak out, that these in-between prizes would sort of fix the mood or make the person feel better or whatever it was. So the first one was different than I think they've become at this point. But it was really based on that first Philly Slam. And I'll let Zach talk about collecting money and having people sign up and not getting enough people to tell stories. And we were nervous. What if no one showed up?
Yeah,
what if
we were
having a party by ourselves?
We were totally nervous that nobody was going to show up. We didn't know what people were going to be interested in. We didn't have a lot of finances to go do a lot of advertising. We printed off some posters and we made a Facebook page. And it's amazing what Facebook can do. I've been totally shocked about how people can be informed just through Facebook these days. But we were really nervous that nobody was going to come. And we really relied on the local community members, like the people who ran the Verve and the people at the Innovation Center, and just to get the word out that we were doing this type of an event. And to our surprise, to our shocking surprise, we had about 50 people show up to our first event, which was just way more than we thought were going to come. So they liked it.
And how many people told stories that night?
How we have it set up is that we want to have 10 stories each night because, maybe more people will sign up than 10, but we don't really have all the time in the world. People, an hour and a half, 2-hour event, that's what people really want to have, I think, in the area. So we would try to get as many people to sign up on their own. And then if we didn't get 10 stories, then we'd kind of start leaning on people that we knew they had good stories. They're very good at telling stories. They're good at getting up in front of a crowd, and they feel very comfortable. And obviously, they have really good. Everybody has a story. That's the other part. Everybody does have a story to tell. You just might have to motivate them or push them a little bit more. Like myself, I haven't even told a story at the storytelling event yet, but I really appreciate and enjoy the atmosphere and the environment that it creates. So I'm that guy who helps push on some of these people where I'm the big hypocrite because I haven't even got up to tell a story yet.
It's one of my goals for this year. I'm going to get you up there.
I know. It's going to have to happen one of these times. I already realize that. But I'll wait a little while longer, I suppose. Well, we have such wonderful stories from people in the community. They get up there and they really feel comfortable sharing. Sometimes people don't always feel so comfortable when they first step up on stage. And then as they tell their story, you can see them get more confident in what they're talking about and maybe feel a little more accepted by everybody in the crowd. And it's a really nice thing to see people having the opportunity to share a little bit about themselves.
Yeah, I did. I made it to the one in February, and it was a very encouraging crowd and, really welcoming atmosphere. So that was cool.
We've had such nice crowds. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, I'm sure there have been some moments where people feel a little uncomfortable, but then I see the crowd really respond to them. Encourage them to tell their story. And it's a really nice moment that people aren't, judging them for feeling embarrassed or anything. It's like people really want them to tell their story and just get to share a little bit of themselves with everybody else. And that's a really nice part of it right there.
Yeah. What you were saying about how everyone has a story. When I first started listening to The Moth and at the first slam I came to, I've been a little bit surprised at how seemingly mundane events can make really great stories. But it is a skill. It's a craft, I think, that maybe people aren't as in touch with, or maybe the mainstream culture isn't as in touch with as it used to be. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's something that people do all the time. I think we tell stories all the time without realizing it. Just getting home at night and telling your roommate or your husband or your wife or your kids about something that happened during the day, that is storytelling. And I don't think that we always think about it that way. Some things that we've been talking about doing are, and they do this in Philly as well, so we're going to borrow it from them, is they actually run workshops now and then to help people feel more comfortable with storytelling. So we were going to talk to some folks in the English department at UMaine to see if they'd be willing to help us run a couple workshops to get people sort of up to speed, because some of our folks like Sarah Smiley are they're natural storytellers. This is what they do. She's an award-winning author. She's been doing this forever. Other folks, you can tell this is the first time they've ever gotten up in front of anyone, let alone tell this very personal story of something that happened to them. So I think that's going to help a little bit.
So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to your community radio station, WERU, 89.9 FM, and the show is Bangor Area Commons, and we're talking about Story Slam Bangor today, which is a live storytelling event that happens in different locations around the Bangor area, and it's part of it seems like almost a revival of storytelling that's kind of been born out of the maybe the Moth. Maybe before that, I'm just not aware. But this idea of story slams and people getting together to tell stories in the way that they would go see music or see poetry, and yeah. So I heard that there is a group that's starting one in Blue Hill.
Yeah, we'd heard the same thing, which I think is great. I think we put some stuff up on our Facebook about them, and they had reached out to Anya. We were really fortunate that Bangor Daily News did a really nice 2-page spread, full color spread about our story slam, which was awesome, and that's really gotten people talking. I know Blue Hill has started one, and I think it's great. The more the merrier. I mean, we don't own this concept or this idea. And I think it's just such a nice way to get community together and to get people engaged in a way that they're not always engaged. Even with music, even with other types of forums, there's something so much more personal about this event where you really get to see and understand people on a much different level than I think you normally would.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that there are different people from different areas of the state that are starting to think about starting their own, because really it doesn't really cost anything. You need some really good communication. You need people to work with each other to make it possible and have a forum and area to do it in. But it doesn't really need to cost very much money if you just want to advertise and get the local community involved in doing an event like this. And it's really nice to see people in other areas that want to put in the extra effort to make something in their community. And that was one of the reasons that I probably got started. I'm from the local Orono area, and a lot of my friends, when I was younger, they all got up and left. They went to Boston, New York. They went to these other places that maybe have more cultural experiences. And I really wanted there to be more nice events around the area. I see lots of young business owners going to the area, starting restaurants, starting, to do what they want to do in the area and making their best effort to really have a good time here in Maine. So to have a nice event like this, where people feel like there's one more thing to do during the week, or every month, I suppose, or just one extra thing that makes people really excited and something that they look forward to going to, that was probably one of my big motivations in the beginning. So it was really wonderful that Anya and Jesse were, already in the midst of planning such a wonderful event.
What have been some of your favorite stories?
We were talking about this on the way
here.
We
were talking about
this on the way. It's
so
funny. So some of my staff haven't been able to make it to the events, or a few have made it, but not all. And so right after the event the next day at work, I'm always hounded. Like, what was the best story of the night? What was your favorite story? And one of the things that we do is we do have a prize for the best story of the night. It's actually the audience favorite story of the night. So everyone in the audience gets to vote for their favorite, and that person gets some sort of random prize that Zach and I and Anya have come up with. And so...
Favorite story, though, Jesse. Favorite story. What's your favorite story?
That's the funny thing, is that I often find myself in disagreement. Like, as one of the organizers, I never vote, but I often think, like, no, that one wasn't my favorite. I have to say, one thing we've been surprised by, so at the end of the night, when everybody votes and we're tallying the votes, we always ask the local host, whoever the restaurant owner is, to tell a story. And we have found that Abe Firth is one of the best storytellers. Like, if Abe was eligible for the prize,
Yeah,
if Abe was eligible for the prize, he would win hands down every time. He's told some phenomenal stories that I just don't even, I think his have to be my favorite. The other one that's been my favorite, and it didn't win, and something about the way that the story was told was so awesome. It was a story that was told at the Verve recently. And it was a story that was told in slow motion and sort of happened in slow motion. This girl was, and I'm just going to botch the details, and I'm okay with that. I've decided. But basically, she was riding a bike, and I could picture the bike. Like, it was definitely a granny bike, no doubt about it, with a giant seat. And she was riding a bike, and she gets out. She was like in Massachusetts, somewhere very busy with traffic, and she gets out into the road to cross the street, and she realizes that she's going to be hit by a car. And she is hit by a car. And in very slow motion, she is laying on the ground, and she realizes she can't get up because the tire of the car is on her leg, and she's not able to get up. But she's very calm, and she looks over and sees that her bike, which she just got, like in someone's attic,
her
is
favorite
destroyed.
Old vintage bicycle.
Destroyed. And she's quite upset. It also turns out that she's very afraid of needles and has realized that having this car on her leg means that she's going to end up in an ambulance and then at a hospital where she's going to come in contact with needles.
A shot. She's going to get a shot from all this experience right here.
Not acceptable.
Not acceptable.
These are her thoughts. Her thoughts are not like, oh, there's a car in my leg. Her thoughts are like, oh, there's going to be needles and my bike is destroyed.
Right.
And so the woman gets out of the car. She's very panicky. And the girl looks up and very calmly says, I need you to back your car up. It's on my leg, right? This is all slow motion. This whole story is told in slow motion. And so, indeed, the woman finally backs the car up. It comes off her leg. She gets in the ambulance. Oh, no, there was something about a nurse. A nurse came running out of a restaurant and said, I think I can help, but I've had a lot
But I
to
have a couple drinks already.
Exactly. And she's like, this is not good. Like, there's a drunk nurse. There's needles. This is terrible.
Yes.
And so they get her in the ambulance, and she's hysterical. And she has her arms clasped behind her back so that they cannot get her arms and put needles in them.
Right.
And she convinces the ambulance driver not to put an IV in her under any circumstances. She's hysterical. She's not thinking about the legs. She's thinking about the needles. She gets to the hospital, same thing. Arms are pinned behind her back. Do not put needles in me. So they don't. Like, she says, well, he says, I need to put a needle in you, blah, 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 IV. And she's like, why? Like, what is in the IV? Is it going to save my life? And he's like, well, you're not going to die. She's like, well, then I don't need a needle. Like, out of the question. She didn't break the leg. Like, the amazing story is the leg was fine. She had a huge bruise, and that was it. And I have to say, it was one of my favorite stories. And I don't know why. Like, part of it was just her funny reaction to the entire situation. Part of it was that she told the story in such a way that you could picture the entire event. Like, it was almost like I was a bystander at this event. And part of it was just the utter irony of hearing what goes on in someone else's head and realizing that the same crazy stuff goes on in our heads and we just don't always vocalize it. I think that was part of it. But that for me was one of my favorite stories, I have to say.
Do you remember what happened at the very end of that?
Well, she talked about the tattoo, but I decided that part of the story I don't care about.
But that's the best part, because she was telling the story, she got done with her story, and she was all done. And she got off the stage, and everybody clapped, and it was wonderful. But it seemed like there was something missing from the end, It seemed like it wasn't completely done. And then she realized, 2 stories later, that she didn't tell everybody that even though she was so afraid of needles, after this, because of the whole event, she got a tattoo to commemorate the event, which is all based on getting a needle pushed in your skin over and over and over again. So the whole idea was that, she got up, she told the story. It was a wonderful story. Everybody liked it. But then afterwards, she felt obligated that she had to stand up, not even on stage, and tell the whole audience that she got a tattoo to commemorate the event.
That is a great story.
So
what was the tattoo of?
It was the bruise. It was an outline of the bruise.
No way.
Yes. It's an outline of the bruise. And it was on her upper thigh, so she couldn't show us.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So it's just things like that.
I thought it was a great story. Okay, what was your favorite story?
There are a lot of the stories have been absolutely fantastic. We've had 4 events so far, so we've had 4 winners. And all the winners' stories have just been absolutely fantastic. They've been from people who really feel comfortable going on stage. They've really done an amazing job. And not all of them have been just like entertaining and happy. I mean, they've all been entertaining, but they haven't all been just happy. I remember our very first event, we had a story, and it was about how people, friends, when you're younger, can grow apart from each other. And even though you grow apart from each other, people's lives still go on. And everybody's life changes as you go along. And later on in life, you might still see these people, and it's always a little weird how everybody's life has changed so much. But I think the overall point of the story was that people change a lot. And then if you lose one of those friends, I think in this case, the woman's, one of her best friends when she was growing up, her friend died. She led a life of, going down one of those roads where she was probably doing drugs and doing activities like that, and it led to her demise in the end. And she felt really terrible about her friend passing away. But also, she realized so many different things about humanity and life from that she was able to get up and tell everybody else this wonderful story. And she was our winner from our first event. And it was not what I expected at all. It's not what I thought the event was going to be like. But people really responded to the humanity in her story and what she was up there to do. So I thought that was just amazing to see her get up there and share something so personal like that.
Do you remember what the theme was that night? Do you want to talk a little bit about themes?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of what comes out of that?
Themes are hard. Yeah, the first one was first. But
Right.
Themes are hard. One thing we found with themes is that they can set the tone of the night. And we definitely want a mix of like funny stories, entertaining stories, and somber stories. But we don't want all sad stories. And so we have to be really careful with the theme.
Let's tell people what the theme is.
The next theme.
Well, I just mean
what the theme
for
is,
each event. Each event, we have 10 people come and tell stories, but we want everybody to have a baseline, something to start from, some sort of word that inspires their story. So we pick a theme. And our first theme for our first event was firsts, first times, first this, first that, whatever, firsts was the whole idea. What was our second one? Holiday disasters, right?
It was holiday disasters.
And
yeah.
Alan Adams told the best story about peeing all over his girlfriend's artwork, his ex-girlfriend's artwork. That was my favorite story.
I think we might need to hear that story.
It's a great story.
Oh my God, there's love triangles in there, and there's artwork, and there's peeing. I mean, it's a fantastic story altogether.
His story was so good because you didn't see it coming. And it's so funny because, and I think books do this really well and stories do this really well, where you're kind of taken down a path where you're convinced that it's going to end in a certain way, and then it doesn't. And Alan's story was just like that. Al nailed it. And what's great is that Al and a really good friend of mine have been involved for a long time. And so to hear him tell this story of the past was so funny. And the way that themes work, too, is that we don't hold anybody to a theme. It just sort of gives them somewhere to start from. And so he talked about how on every holiday, he's had some sort of relationship milestone.
Disaster. No, a breakup. There was always a breakup on every holiday, it seemed like, right?
And it was right before Christmas. And so he was so concerned about breaking up with my friend, like something was going to happen. And so, and he had this great line about, and then there was the July 4th, my Independence Day. He had some great lines about like Valentine's Day. And this particular girl, they'd broken up on Thanksgiving, gotten back together, and then broke up again on Christmas.
Oh.
It was awesome. And there were love triangles, and it was great.
Well, he was in love with this girl, or he was dating this girl. I guess
They'd
I can't
lived
remember.
together.
They lived together. They did. They shared an apartment together. And she went off to college someplace. And when she was off at college, I think they were still together, but she got herself involved in this crazy love triangle with these two other people in the college.
A man and a woman.
A man and a woman. So the drama just started from right there. And she comes back and tells poor Al that she just doesn't think she can be with him anymore, something along those lines. And just breaks his little heart, it sounds like. And there are so many twists and turns, this fantastic story. I could not even come close to doing it justice. But then she gets back together with him. Then she goes back to college, gets back into the three-way, the love triangle.
Three-way.
The three-way, of course, yes. And then she comes back, and Alan is just furious at this point. I think he's like sacrificed, his integrity and everything for this woman, and she just drops him flat on the floor. So, and obviously they're in the apartment they shared when they go ahead and do this.
It's a revenge story.
And this is a revenge story. It's a holiday disaster story. And he goes around the house and he gets all of her artwork and he makes a big pile of it in the middle of the living room, and she's right there, and he just, the ultimate revenge right here. He just unzips his pants, takes it out, and decides to urinate all over the artwork right there. I mean,
great.
Oh my God, the people in the audience, their jaws were dropped.
Wild.
They were like, oh my God, it was hilarious.
People laughed.
They thought it was hysterical. And what was great is what I thought he was going to say was, and then I set it on fire. Like, obviously, that was what was going to happen, but no. Al did not set it on fire. And actually, this story, because he won, is up on our Facebook page, so you can watch him tell it, which is great.
He's so animated, and he has such a presence up there, and he was absolutely fantastic at that event. And he won. Everybody was so...
Hands down.
Oh, my God. He was so funny.
Well, I think after that story, I have to take a moment to say you're listening to WERU, your community radio station. And we are going to take calls. We're talking to two founding organizers, Zachary and Jesse of the Story Slam Bangor. And if you want to call in with questions about the event or comments about the art of storytelling, the state of storytelling in mainstream culture, anything like that, the number is 469-0500, and the toll-free number is 866-625-9378.
So, Meaghan, thank you so much for having us here today, by the way.
Thanks for coming in.
Well, it's just so exciting to get the opportunity to come and, talk about something that we've been doing in a different forum than what we've been able to do so far. So thanks for extending that opportunity to us, and thanks to WERU for having us out here today.
Yeah, I'm hoping to come out to some events in the future with a recorder and actually recording some of the stories and getting them on the air at some point. So folks can have a chance to listen to what actually happens on stage, or they can come out. When can they come out to the event?
Our next event is going to be held in Orono on March 20th, and it's going to be at the Verve. It'll be our third time being at the Verve. They've been absolutely fantastic to accommodate our schedule, and they always seem to go above and beyond in helping us, so we just love that. It's kind of like our home base in Orono. I feel like that we go back to there and work with Abe and Heather, and they're just wonderful. And our theme, Jesse, what's our theme going to be?
It's so it's in honor of St. Patrick's Day. It's luck or lack thereof. So any stories about luck or not having luck is totally fine.
And I'm sorry, what was the day again?
March 20th. It's a Sunday, and are we starting at 8 p.m., 7 p.m.?
8 p.m.
8 p.m. on March 20th. And it normally lasts for about 2 hours. And, it's been picking up. The amount of people that have been coming to the event have been picking up. And, the place can only hold probably 50, 60, 65, 70 people at the most, I believe. So, if you want to make sure you get a spot, well, eventually, one of these days, we have this horrible nightmare that we're going to have to tell people that they can't come in because of, fire codes or something at the establishment. We picked a place, and it's not big enough, and we have too many people come. We don't know what we're going to do when that problem happens.
You might have to move to a bigger venue.
Absolutely.
We've been looking at stuff.
We have been. We've been looking at different restaurants and different places that they might be willing to accommodate, have an event where, just have us over to hang out.
We're also planning a Grand Slam, which is something that the Moth does, which is so much fun. And it's a pretty typical thing to do for a Story Slam. So we're thinking next January, we're going to bring back all of our winners and let them tell a story and sort of duke it out amongst themselves to be the Story Slam Bangor winner. So I think that's going to be really fun. It's something that we're definitely looking forward to, for sure.
Absolutely.
And there'll be a special prize for that or something, too.
Yeah. There's always good prizes.
So there's usually a cash prize, or?
It sort of depends. We tried a cash prize last time. We've done gift certificates. Sometimes we do gift certificates to the next establishment that's going to host us. We've done them to the main Meaghan in downtown Orono. I don't know what we're doing this time around. We try to mix it up. People that tell stories tend to tell stories for the joy of telling it. So I think the prize is just sort of an added bonus, and it's just a fun way to get the audience involved, and it's a nice thing. The other thing that we do is, so it's $5 at the door, mostly to cover our expenses. So we've got to pay for poster printing and prizes. And we also provide some sort of random all-you-can-eat food. And so in the past at the Verve, we've done all-you-can-drink coffee, and we've done all-you-can-eat cookies. So I don't know what we're going to do this month. I just emailed Abe this morning and said, what do you want to do for all-you-can-eat something? Right. So that sort of adds to the randomness of the event, I think.
Yeah, there have been some pretty random things that have gone on with that. But everybody's been really wonderful. Oh, I remember when we were at the Fiddlehead for our second event, first time in the Verve in Bangor, in Orono, then we wanted to go to Bangor. We like to move the location because we want a greater group of people to want to come to our event. The one in Orono seems like a little bit different than the ones that we have in Bangor. And there are a lot of wonderful establishments everywhere that can benefit from having, 50, 60 random people show up at their place in the evening time. So we want to really be able to appeal to lots of different places and spread that business around. We really want to help support small businesses, and they've been so wonderful to help support us. So all the people that we've worked with so far, the Verve in Orono, the Fiddlehead in Bangor was so nice to accommodate our second event, our first one in Bangor. It was fun. We had some wine, and there was definitely a little bit of a different atmosphere there. Alan telling us Peen story. It was wonderful. And then just this past event, we were at the Charles Inn in Bangor, which is where we met you, Meaghan, was that your first one that you attended?
It was the first one, yep.
Right. Well, it was wonderful to have that group of people there, and there was quite a few people that showed up for this particular one. And the Charles Inn was a fantastic place. The Big Easy, is that what their bar is called, the Big Easy? And I had never been in there before. I'm almost a little embarrassed to say that I had never been in there before. But it was a fantastic opportunity to go to some place that I'd never been before, and the manager Connie, she was overly accommodating. She was absolutely wonderful about everything, and the bartender, he was fantastic also, and it just seemed like everybody had a really wonderful time there. So we'll have to make that place on our agenda again.
Yeah, you mentioned before how you always invite the business owners up to tell a story. Connie had a great story that night about egg yolks or something that. They hosted our live broadcast Valentine's dance party back in February too, so it was a great space for that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. They're great.
Very accommodating and nice people.
Yes.
One thing I would say, too, if someone's thinking about starting something like this up, we started with friends, and that's always where you want to start. Like Zach was talking about earlier, how we were thinking, like, oh, my gosh, what if no one comes? Or what if no one wants to tell the story? And so you always sort of end up with a few people in your back pocket. And I happen to know Abe and Heather Firth pretty well from the Verve, so I knew that they'd be willing to help. And I also know Laura Albus really well from Fiddlehead. She's an old friend of mine from college. So we really reached out to our friends and family first. I made my brother tell a story or two, and that really helped. And I think that's sort of how you almost bootstrap these things. You've got to start somewhere. And so starting with friends and people you know is a great place to start, and then it just takes off from there. So if this is something you're thinking you want to try it. Try it with some friends. Try it, in your living room. Try it anywhere and just see if it works and see how people like it. And that worked so great for us, I think.
I'm curious what you might have learned about storytelling since starting this venture. Do you feel like maybe your storytelling skills have evolved, or has there been any surprises along the way?
My storytelling skills definitely have not evolved, not at all. But I do know that a lot of things a lot of the reasons why I got involved and why I got started helping this event take off were things that I thought were fun and interesting. But then once I started talking with other local community members and reading the article in the Bangor Daily about how storytelling is a lost art and that people don't do this anymore, I'm like, geez, I never thought about that. I just wanted something fun to do on a Thursday night. I wanted there to be other things going on that people felt like they could get up and be involved in. And then people are talking about how storytelling, people don't do it anymore. And I'm like, geez, people don't do it anymore. And I was talking to this amazing man. He's 80 plus, and he's from Vinyl Haven Island. And I was sitting down and I was talking to him about how people don't tell stories anymore. He read the article in the Bangor Daily News. He was talking to me about it, and he was just like, I just couldn't believe it. I was talking to this old man. He was telling me that we were reviving something that people did not do anymore. And I don't know. I never thought about it that way. I just didn't think about it that way. And apparently a lot of people do look at it that way. And that's kind of neat. A completely different thing than I thought was going to happen.
I completely agree. And it's funny because I don't even know if it was us that revived storytelling. I think it was things like The Moth that sort of inspired us to do this. But I totally agree with Zach. I think a lot of this is just that we were looking for something different to do. Something that felt like it was missing. And after our first event at the Verve, as people were leaving, Anya overheard someone say, wow, this really makes it feel like a community here. And honestly, I think some of it has to do with the fact that it's chem-free. We're just hanging out at the Verve, drinking coffee and eating cookies and just hanging out. And it's not about... It's not about meeting someone. It's not about going on a date. It's not about anything. It's not about drinking. It's just about listening and engaging and telling stories and dealing with things that have happened in your life, I guess. I think that's part of it. And I think some of it's just being entertaining and being silly. And I don't know. I think it gives people an opportunity they would never have otherwise. One
of the parts I've mostly enjoyed, probably one of the coolest things about the whole storytelling event in a smaller community like the Bangor. I mean, look, there's not a lot of people around this area. What's Bangor, 50,000 people? I'm probably, by 20 exaggerating. 36. Yeah, 36. Well, anyway, there's this real fun sense where you see somebody tell a story on stage. You've never met them. You don't know them. They tell this story, and suddenly you know this much about their life. You know just a little bit more about who they are. And, if you see them out and about, you run into them at the store, you can immediately say, I loved that story you told. What inspired you to get up and tell that story? I mean, you just immediately know more about somebody in your local area, and you run into them all the time. I now know so many more people from my local community just because they come to the events. I see them tell stories. We get to have a handshake and we get to say hello. And now I know so many more people. That part is really nice to get to have something like that.
And you get to know people in a totally different way than you would under most circumstances.
Right.
Right. It's not the story that you would get, with small talk at a dinner party,
I think it connects people in a way that nothing else possibly could. And I do have to say, and it's funny, I've thought this a couple times, but then I sort of applied it to myself. Because one of the great things about being a host, and Anya will say the same thing, I'm sure, is that we always get to tell a story, which is so much fun. We don't throw our names in the hat. We just tell a story. As the host is the person doing all the work, it's one of the benefits. You always get to tell a story. And so... it's funny, I was thinking at one point, I can't believe someone just told that story. That's so personal. Oh my goodness, it is looking in their underwear closet. That's crazy. And then I realized that, my stories are that personal. Like you don't think about it when you're up there. You're just telling the story. And everybody in that audience is so welcoming and so kind, and you can see people change when they're telling a story. I think Zach was talking about that earlier. You can see them going through the macerations of like being really nervous. And then my brother told a really funny story about tobogganing down Sugarloaf, like down Whiffletree. And he and his friends hit a pole. They were tobogganing at night. And they hit one of the giant poles on the chairlifts, and they thought my brother was dead because he got knocked out and was bloody, and it was a giant mess. And I was sitting right near him when he told the story, and two really funny things happened. One, you could see him get nervous, like as he's telling the story, and two, there was a moment where I could see him picturing the entire story. You could see the whole story run through his head, and it was like you were there. And I think that that's part of it. It's so different from TV. It's so different from anything else because you can picture it in your own mind as though you were an observer in anything, in any of these people's lives, which is really interesting.
Yeah, that's one thing I've heard about radio is it's the most visual medium because listening does really allow the imagination to really take over.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you are listening to WERU, your community radio station 89.9, and the show is Bangor Area Commons, and we're talking about storytelling and the Story Slam Bangor, which is a live storytelling event that takes place monthly in different locations around the Bangor area. I wanted to talk a little bit more about workshops at some point. You had mentioned before that you were thinking of having workshops, and what's that going to look like, and have you started thinking about what they might be?
So we're talking about putting together some workshops because
Anya wanted to.
Well, Anya wanted to. And Billy does it, so it must be cool.
It is
cool.
And
I think the other reason is because some folks are sort of natural storytellers. They can get right up there and just tell a story. And other people you can tell struggle a little bit or get a little nervous. And some people, I think, want to tell a story and just don't feel like they don't have the nerve, don't feel like their story's polished enough. And so I was going to reach out. I've got a couple of friends on the English faculty that I was going to reach out to see if they'd be willing to do some workshops to sort of help people polish up on their storytelling skills to see if they can help. And we don't struggle with, but every now and then we have a hard time getting people to throw their name in. So we tell 5 stories. When you come in, you pay your $5 at the door, and then if you want to, you can fill out the form to tell a story. We throw it in a bucket, and we pull 5 names out of the bucket at random, and then we have an intermission. And a lot of times people will throw their names in at the intermission because they'll think like, oh, my story is better than that. I could win this.
And which is really good because lots of times we only have like 6 stories to start, and we really want to have 10 by the end. So if we have 6 to start, we start, 5 people go, and an intermission, hopefully a whole bunch of people throw their name in the hat.
So part of it is just that we need more people to throw their names in.
Right.
So that's part of the reason to have the workshop is just to help people feel more comfortable so that when they come, they just throw their names and they don't even think about it. And it's funny because Zach and I are the perfect yin and yang. Like, I love telling stories. That's part of why we do this. And Zach would rather pretty much just poke himself in the eye before he got up there and told the story.
Oh, yes.
So I think that we're the perfect yin and yang when it comes to this. So I'm making him do the workshop, and he's telling a story before.
Okay, I'll do it.
Have you told a story on stage?
No, I haven't told a story on stage. I've been on stage. I just haven't, had the story to tell, I feel like.
He has tons of stories.
I don't know. Well, everybody has stories, but sometimes, certain people have a different amount of, entertaining quality. People really feel comfortable in front of an audience. And maybe that's, I feel comfortable talking to people. But everybody looking at me on the stage, not so comfortable. But that's all right. I agree. There was this one girl at one of our first events, or our second event. She said something along the lines of, I wanted to tell a story so bad last time, and I didn't. And I felt terrible ever since I didn't, try. And then she got up there, and she was really, really, really nervous. And she was playing with her hands a lot. And you could just see her, settle into telling her story. She relaxed. She was there. Everyone was looking at her. She couldn't go anywhere. And she just kind of relaxed into it and started talking at her own pace. And that's the fun part, is that everybody does it differently. And that is really, really, there's no set rules of how you have to do it, however it makes you feel comfortable. So I guess I'm not there yet, but
It is like talking to your friends, though, because like whenever I tell a story, I always focus on the couple of people in the audience who I know really well, and I just pretend I'm telling them the story and that there's nobody else there, because there is a lot of people there. We usually have between 50 and 60 people, and there's a lot of people, but that's really the key, I think, is just to tell the story to those few people that you know that you're closest to, and just go. And a lot of people bring posses, I think, for that reason.
People do bring posses. They bring their posse. They get all the votes at the end with the posse. It's good. It helps.
I see how it works.
I think it's encouraging, which is great. If you can encourage your friends to come because you're going to tell a story, that's even better for us. I mean, it really, it's not just us trying to advertise. It's people advertising for the event, and so to bring their friends out to do something fun. Yeah. And I remember you weren't there by yourself. You were there with somebody else or a couple other people.
Yeah, I brought a little crew. Yep. My coworker
that's
Adam was there. Adam from here at the station.
Was he the one who let us in?
Yep.
Oh my goodness, I was in such a hurry. We were a little late, everybody. Sorry about that. We've made everything a little difficult for everybody this morning, but the roads were bad out there.
Well, I learned about it through the Bangor Daily News article, and I was just so excited to see that it was happening and that, there was an opportunity to go to one. I'd been listening to them all for a while, so it's very exciting.
That's great. So what did you think? Like, there was like 10 people got up to tell stories, and the Moriarty band story won.
True, yes.
That was pretty good.
I liked all of them. I was really surprised at the caliber of story that each one, I felt like totally entertained by every person that got up on stage, which, I hate to say that I was a little bit surprised because, I don't want to like sell our community short or anything, but I seemed like people had really put a thought into it, and there was just like natural presence on stage. It was great.
I really liked the one where the girl was telling about how she broke up with a guy that she didn't know she was dating.
Yes.
That one.
Yeah.
She didn't want to tell a story. I had to be like, hey, you gotta, come on. I know you have a story. And she got it right up there, and she was fantastic. She just felt so comfortable, and you could see it in her, how she moved, and her telling the story.
It was a great story. It was about, so she was telling a story about having to break up with someone that she was completely unaware that she was dating.
Correct. Yes. She was, and I don't remember all the details, but just the idea, the premise behind breaking up with somebody that you don't know that you're actually dating.
Yeah. Like, and what was the theme that night?
It was
broken up.
Broken hearts, or broken up. Yeah.
It was broken up.
Singles Awareness Day.
Singles Awareness
Day.
Right,
because it was just after Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Which Anya, she does a fantastic job with coming up with posters and themes and whatnot. She's been such an asset to having in this group of people. And it's great. I'm so happy that she had the opportunity to move on and find a great job, hopefully, that she loves. But man, I miss her already. I do. I mean, she was just such a asset to us, and I'm sure she'll still help us with things, but.
We should say that our next Story Slam on March 20th, we're actually donating all the proceeds to the MS Society, Multiple Sclerosis Society. Unfortunately, right after Anya moved to Boston, her mom passed away after a very long battle with MS. And so all the proceeds are going to be donated in her honor, which I think Anya's just thrilled about, which is great. And so funny, Anya sent Zach and I a note the other day that for her mom's memorial, they're actually going to do it in the style of a story slam. So the memorial is just going to be people getting up and telling stories. And I thought, somebody put that in my will. Like, that's great. Like, let's totally do it that way. And I think that is the perfect way to pay tribute to someone, is just to tell your stories, whether they're funny or sad, and I think that's how you learn about a person's life, for sure.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's going to be really nice.
Yeah, I think so also.
Nice way to honor her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, our thoughts go out to Anya. I'm sorry she couldn't be with us on the air today. But,
yeah.
Can you tell us again what the theme is for the upcoming?
Sure.
Slam?
And I'm very Irish, so in honor of St. Patrick's Day, it's actually luck or lack thereof. So either luck or not so lucky.
Is this going to be a first time for you? You're going to be getting up on stage?
Oh, I haven't made any decisions
Not
yet.
till after
you
the
never
workshop.
know. I'll be honest. I'm so busy there trying to get people to sign forms and take money. I don't know. I'm just trying my little heart out to get everything done. So,
We also have a guest MC this time. So,
Who is it? Who's going to be?
Anya. Well, so Anya was always our MC, which was great.
Right.
Well, we had Deb Newman the first time,
Yes.
and then Anya's been our MC, and then Anya moved to Boston. So Alan Adams was our last MC, and this month it's going to be Sarah Smiley. So we're very excited to have
Sarah Smiley won the last event, didn't she?
She did.
She did. Our $50 cash prize.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh
Big
my
night
goodness.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Sarah's going to be our
She's going to be wonderful. She
guest
has such a
MC.
fantastic personality.
She
and she
does.
feels so comfortable up there when she tells her stories. She's had some of the best stories. She
Oh, for
really,
sure.
really has. And you have to check out the Facebook page to look at some of those because I know they're up there, right?
a couple of hers
A
are up
couple
there.
of
Yeah.
hers.
Where can folks find you online? And
We're Story Slam Bangor on Facebook, and we're actually working on putting together a website. So we are going to have a website too for those folks like Zach who are not on Facebook.
Yeah, not a Facebook friend.
And we're starting an email list as well for folks who just do email so that they can get information. And we also print up posters. I mean, some of this is still the old-fashioned way, so we cover Orono and Bangor with posters right before our event, so that helps too, getting the word out.
so is it just the two of you at this point holding down that effort?
It is. I think we are going to reach out to one other person probably. We're thinking we're probably going to take the summer off and maybe do one outdoor event during the summer, and then we'll come back in the fall and do. So we've got a couple more months, and then we're going to take a little time off and then come back in the fall.
Yeah, we've been having a really good time there. I've become more aware of other organizations in the Bangor area now, other people that are doing community events, and they've really been really supportive of our events. They've been coming to our events. One person who stands out in my mind is Johan Sabeth. Is that how you
Yes,
Johan
yeah.
Sabeth? And he works for
The Bangor Chamber
Fusion
of
Bangor.
Commerce.
Oh,
Yep,
yes.
and Fusion Bangor. Yep.
And Fusion Bangor has started advertising our events on their website, and they've been really supportive of us. So we really appreciate all of their efforts and
Bangor Green
helping
Drinks
us.
as well has
Bangor
been
Green
so
Drinks.
nice and so helpful. And actually, Johan's been talking about teaming up the Story Slam and Green Drinks, which I think would be really fun if we did a joint event. So
I
it's
agree.
amazing how many people have reached out to us with different ideas, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and I hope we're not
always
forgetting about it.
open
I
to
mean,
stuff.
there have been so many people who've been supportive of us and helping us, and it's just really wonderful to have had, to have started something and then seen so many people, really embrace what we've done and be thankful that we've done it. And, it's just a really fantastic opportunity, just like being here today, having you guys allowing us to come here and talk about this. We haven't got to do this before. This is a lot of fun talking like this
told you
about
you'd
the whole
like
event.
it.
I do like it. It's a good time.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm wondering if you think that's enough time to maybe tell us a story.
It is. I don't know what story I'm going to tell though.
What is there one that you've had on stage before that
I've
sticks
done a
out?
couple on stage. I don't know. What do
Your
you think,
camp,
Zach?
the insurance from your camp.
Oh my gosh.
That was a
okay.
great story.
All right, I'll tell that story. Okay, so I'm going to tell a story about my wedding. And so I got married about 6 years ago, and my husband and I didn't have a ton of money. My folks pitched in, which was great. But I worked in the restaurant business for years and years, and I worked for Michael Gagne, who is the chef of the Robin Hood Free Meeting House in Georgetown, Maine. And he was just named Chef of the Year a couple years ago. And I knew Michael had to cater my wedding. Like that's where all the money was going. And I grew up in Georgetown, Maine, and my family has a cottage out in Five Islands, Maine. And so we were going to have the wedding down at the cottage, and then we were going to have a huge meal. We had filet and lobster tails and just the most delicious meal at the meeting house. And the meeting house could only seat 40, so that's all that we had at the wedding. And my husband and I, we were very non-traditional. We didn't have bridesmaids or groomsmen or anything, which was great because neither my best friend nor his best friend actually made it to the wedding itself. They were both late. So it all worked out just fine. And so there was all this planning. I mean, if you've ever planned a wedding, it's a huge amount of work. And one of the things that I hadn't really thought about in this planning, so I'm planning rehearsal dinners and I'm planning the wedding and we're talking about where we're going to stay after and we're talking about honeymoons and all this stuff and how much it's all going to cost and what we're going to eat and blah, blah, blah. So you plan and plan and plan. You pick out a dress, you do all this stuff. And what I hadn't realized until the night before the wedding was the amazing experience of having everyone I'd ever loved in my entire life in one place. Everybody, my brother and sister, my friends from elementary school and high school and college. And it was, I just remember being struck and in awe by the fact that everyone I loved was in one place and they never would be again. And so we were at my family's cottage. We were all staying there for the night, and we had lots to drink, and we stayed up for most of the night. And at one point, we were out on the beach, and there's all these pictures. I mean, we must have taken 1 million pictures that night of just everyone in my life I'd ever loved in this one place. Ironically, my poor husband, who decided to be very traditional and not see me the night before the wedding, got stuck with my grandmother and my dad. And so he spent the night with them, and I spent the night like in the lap of heaven, just as happy as could be. So we stay up most of the night. There's all these pictures taken. The next morning I wake up and I have the worst hangover I've ever had in my entire life. Like, I am green. I can't even function. And luckily, one of my best friends picks me up and takes me to the makeup artist who is going to do my hair and my makeup. And she somehow revives me so that I look kind of normal. And so the night goes on. It's fantastic. I find out that my husband had procrastinated getting the hotel room for that night at the bed and breakfast. And so we end up back at the cottage with all my friends on our wedding night, which was fine. So anyway, it was wonderful. Everyone I loved was there. I revived myself. It was great. And last winter, I was driving back from a conference, and I got a call from my mom, and I thought someone had died. She was so upset. And I'm driving, and she said, the cottage has burned down. And this cottage, this beach house, had been in our family for 40 years and was like a member of the family. And it had burned to the ground. And I mean, we were devastated. It was like someone in our family died. But the ironic part is my aunt sends out this call to the whole family. We need all these pictures. The house was full of antiques, and they need pictures of everything so that the insurance company can get it. And ironically, the most pictures of the cottage ever were taken the night before my wedding. And so there are pictures with me and everyone I've ever loved in my life drinking beer in our cottage. And that's what the insurance company used to refill the cottage, was those pictures. So there was no hiding anything that we'd done that night. But it was great. It was a really nice moment. And what's funny is when I told that story, it was the night that the BDN was at the Story Slam. And there's this humongous picture of me in the BDN with this very funny look on my face telling that story, and I cannot figure out at what point in the story I would have made that face. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Kind of get into that story zone. And
that's right.
Physical self-awareness kind of goes out the window.
No idea why my eyes would have been closed and my thumbs pointed out. I have no idea why I would have done that.
Thanks for telling the story.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's been so much fun.
Absolutely. It's been great to have you in the
This
studio.
has been wonderful. Thank you. And look forward to seeing you on March 20th for our next one.
Yeah.
March 20th. So you've been listening to Bangor Area Commons, of course, on WERU, your community radio station. Tune in this time next month. We're every first Thursday from 10 to 11. This has been the Bangor Story Slam. Jesse and Zachary, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
for listening.